In general, when you're reading a trout stream, you want to look for water that's 2 to 4 feet deep, moving at 1 to 2 feet per second with a uniform flow and not turbulent. And if you can find those three things in a stream, you can usually find the fish. So I'm Tom Rosenbauer, and I'm fishing a little mountain stream. I love to fish all kinds of things. I love saltwater, I love big rivers, I like ponds for bass and carp. But small stream fishing is what I have close to my home, so I do a lot of it. And you know, I can come back from a tarpon fishing trip and still get excited about 7-inch brookies. That's just the way I am. So I don't mind catching little fish. They're beautiful. It's all about the eat anyways. So I'm on this little stream today. I have two of my own flies on, and they're FMF flies. I don't, almost never do I fish flies that I haven't tied myself. But these are my patterns. Fulling mill has tied them. They actually tie them better than I can tie them. So I've got two fulling mill flies on today. I've got the Rosenhopper, which is kind of my big attractor. And then I have a little ant pattern called the General T. It's an ant. General T refers to general terrestrial. It's not General Tom, it's General T. I was out on the Teton River in Idaho fishing with a guide, and they use a lot of ants out there. And he's a good friend. I've fished with him for a long time, and he pulls out this fly and says, "This is my secret ant pattern." And I look at it, and it's a General T. I said, "You know, that's my pattern." He said, "Yeah, I know, but nobody else fishes it out here, and it works really well." So I was pretty pleased with that a guide actually considered one of my patterns a top secret pattern. Not top secret anymore, I guess. So I started out fishing a dry dropper, which is my usual go-to on a little mountain stream like this, and I didn't have a single hit on the nymph. So I'm going to go double dry. The fish seem to be looking up if they're looking at anything. Water's low. They're restricted to places. They're not all over the place today. They're in a little bit deeper water, and so I'm going to try double dry and see how that works. So I'm going to ignore this stuff. I have learned today that the fish are not in this thinner water. Sometimes they are, but they're not in it today. They're in the deeper water. In general, when you're reading a trout stream, you want to look for water that's 2 to 4 feet deep, moving at 1 to 2 feet per second with a uniform flow and not turbulent. And if you can find those three things in a stream, you can usually find the fish. So you'll notice as I'm fishing, I may not be able to find 2-foot water, but at least I'll be fishing the deeper pockets where there is some flow and you know, with some protection. Of course, there's tons of protection here because there's rocks all over the place, so that's not a worry in this water. I often find that fish are in the lip of the pool or the tail out of a little pool. And so a lot of people will walk right up to the tail out and fish up to the head. And you always want to make a few casts in the tail out, because that's where the fish often go to feed, where the water kind of gets constricted at the tail. Nothing there. So gonna move on. That was a good one. That was a good brook trout. Like I said, you're going to miss a bunch. That was a really nice fish for here, probably 8 or 9 inches. I don't think he'll come back, but sometimes brook trout will. Browns almost never, but sometimes a brook trout will come back, maybe to the smaller fly too. But I kind of jerked it. I don't think I'm going to get a third try. but you never know. Ah! I think that one that's taken is a smaller fish. Oh, damn. What a stupid fish. Come on, eat it. Now he finally got wise to me. Now, the thing here is, should I switch flies and try to catch them? Nah. There's plenty of pools in here, and there's plenty of fish, so I'm not going to worry about it. And probably he was spooked anyways, because I jerked that fly away from him I don't know how many times. So I'm not going to, well, I'm going to try once more, but I'm not going to change flies. No. Sometimes you can try a twitch, but it almost never works in here. These fish are very sensitive to drag. You know, they're wild brook trout. They're not very sophisticated, but you know, natural stuff doesn't drag. It doesn't twitch that much. So twitching the fly in some streams will work okay, but it doesn't really work in here. And it's always good to check out these little pockets, because this one's pretty deep. It's over 2 feet deep in there. So I'm gonna throw a couple casts. Nope, nobody home. You don't want to belabor these small brook trout streams very much. You want to cover a lot of ground, because they're either going to take it the first couple casts, or they're either spooked or they're not there. It's generally not a problem with the fly pattern. And again, I'm gonna throw one into the tail of this pool, because sometimes they'll be sitting right at the lip. And that's probably enough. I got a good drift through there. That's plenty. Now that surprises me. Should have been a fish in there. That's very surprising. So either they're not eating or there's nobody home. Either way, you move on. Sometimes in the summer like this, when the water's very low, the fish will be in faster water, broken water. Couple reasons is, one is that there's more oxygen there in case the water is fairly warm, although it's not that warm in here today. But the other reason is that broken water provides a lot of protection for the fish. Their predators can't see them as well in broken water. So I think it's a combination of the oxygen, and I think even more important is the fact that they're a little more protected underneath that broken water. All right, this looks good. Let's see if we can do anything in here. Yeah, we can catch a rock. So, what do you do when you get caught? You got a nice pool there. You try to roll cast it out, and if that doesn't work, do you blow the pool and go get your fly, or do you break it off and try another fly? Well, we got plenty of pools to fish, so I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna go get that fly, and sometimes you can get pretty close to these fish, so I'll still try a couple casts in there. People are going to ask, why are you not using a wading staff in those slippery rocks? Well, I got plenty of wading staffs. I got wading staffs around every bend, and you notice I use my other hand a lot. That's my wading staff. I don't need one in this kind of water. I got my butt and my hand, and they're just as good as a wading staff when you're crawling along the bank. Now, I typically avoid this dead water, like this water on the side here. If there's no current, there's probably no food, and the fish just aren't going to live there. So you need to find that 1 to 2 foot per second water, which is most of the current in here. These little brook trout streams like this, you need to be accurate to put your fly in the right place, but you don't need to hit every little pocket, because these fish will move across a pool to eat the fly. They don't have a lot of food in here, so you need to get it out there in a decent spot, but you don't need to hit every little pocket, because again, they're gonna move for it. I am really surprised that there's no fish in here. Or there's no fish that I can catch anyways. So I am going to put on a nymph, because I've fished a couple of pools that should have had fish in them. I typically use fluorocarbon for my dropper, but I realized that I switch back and forth with this little thing between carp fishing and small stream trout fishing because it's convenient, but all I got is 12, 16, and 20-pound fluorocarbon, so I'll go with nylon. Doesn't sink quite as well, but I'll put on a heavier fly. And it doesn't matter that much, I don't know. I do like fluorocarbon for nymphs, but... And I just tie my fly to the bend of the hook. Yes, I know with a barbless hook it can slip off, but I don't find it happening that often. So I do it. Nymphs are disposable. And how deep do I make it? I just eyeball it. I don't think there's any special formula. I think that the fish will move up for a nymph. You don't need to get it on the bottom, but how far they move up, that's another question. So you want to get close to the bottom, maybe, or maybe in mid-water. But you don't need to go super deep, especially in these small streams, because most of their food comes from above. So I am tying on my wire mayfly nymph. I started out with my double tungsten pheasant tail, which is usually pretty effective, but I didn't even have a take that I suspected on that. So the wire mayfly is a little flashier and a little heavier, and so we'll see if that works any better, but I generally don't mess with the nymph pattern much in here. But since I'm changing and putting one on, I'll just try a different one. But generally, if they're going to eat the nymph, I don't think it matters that much. Size 14 or 16, something buggy, maybe something subtle, maybe something flashy. You got to, you know, try both of them. Well, the reason I use wire on a lot of my nymphs is that thin for the win, right? We've learned that from the competition anglers, but they use, a lot of them use thread or floss or whatever, and then they coat it with UV resin. And you know what? That's too much work for me. That's something I got to stop in my fly tying cadence and use UV resin, and I don't like to do that. And wire gives you the same effect. It has a little flash. It's super durable, and it sinks quickly. It adds a little weight to the fly, so that's why I use wire bodies. And it's, you know, it's like a Perdigon, but I don't have to worry about messing with the UV resin. Oh, did I was looking at my feet. That might have been a rock. Pretty sure.
No, I saw the fish.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
What? Did,
your tripod.
oh, there he is. Now I'm gonna wish I had the double dry on, right? As soon as I put a nymph on.
How it always goes.
Yeah. And this, one of the stupidest things you can do, I just spooked a fish. One of the stupidest things you can do is exactly what I've been doing, is false casting in between pockets. You know, you're gonna get caught in the trees, you're gonna get caught in the moss in front of you. It's dumb, but I do it. And I just spooked a fish from in here, so that tells me I gotta try to be a little stealthier. Now there should be a fish up right in there. Jesus. Come on, fish. Where are you? Well, so it's got lots of rocks on the bottom. There's lots of places for the fish to sit out of the current and hide. It's decent depth, and it's got some current to it, so it's bringing food to them. So I'm sure there's fish right there. I'm just not, either I spooked them, or I don't think I have the wrong fly on, honestly. That nymph should be producing, and it's not. That was probably a rock. So I'm going to be smart, because I got to walk around a little bit here. And so I'm going to not false cast in between pools this time. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but sometimes I learn my lesson. As I remember, this pool looks really good, but it hasn't fished that well for me, and I'm not sure why. I haven't been in here in a while. Boy, if a nymph doesn't work in here, pretty surprising that in that deep pool there isn't a fish that'll eat that nymph. You know there's fish in there. Gotta be there. Sometimes the real juicy pools get more fishing pressure though, you know. The real juicy ones, sometimes people come down and fish bait or whatever in the deep pools, but there should be some fish in here regardless. Amazing. Amazing. Ah! The nymph did produce. That's a little bit better fish. Yeah, that's a, I wouldn't call it a monster, but it's a decent fish for this little stream, an old male. I was just about ready to fire that nymph, but I think I'll stick with it. But it took, now that's unusual. It took a half dozen casts to catch that fish, and that's unusual in these little streams. So, lesson learned, maybe don't give up so quickly. Maybe fish a little slower. You know, you learn something new every time you go out. And I learned that maybe I should give the nymph a little bit more chance. But you know that fish had to be in there. It's 2 to 4 feet deep. It's not turbulent. It's got plenty of cover. It's moving at 1 to 2 feet per second, so the fish gets food. So, you know, it's got it all. The other thing about reading the water is things change with conditions. So when I first started out today, I was firing my fly pretty much everywhere, in shallow water, deep water, slower water, and sometimes they're in that water, even in the same stream. Sometimes they're in that water, but I didn't get any rises or hits or anything. So I quickly realized that, yeah, with this low water, the fish are going to be in the deeper pockets and a little bit faster water. So reading the water, you know, there's a lot of trial and error. You gotta figure out what water the fish prefer. Now you might say, well, it's low water. Yeah, obviously the fish are going to be in deeper water with a little current, but you know, you could come here and for some reason the fish could be in shallow water out in the open. Maybe there had been some flying ants, and so the fish had moved into shallower water to take advantage of the easy way of eating those flying ants or grasshoppers or whatever. So you do have some trial and error. It's certainly not an exact science, this reading the water stuff. Well, if you're fishing a stream like this for the first time, the very first thing you want to do is don't fish where somebody else is fishing. If you see a car, and you know, this stream doesn't get a ton of pressure, although it does get some. If you see a car, go somewhere else. It's not cool, it's not fair to the other angler, and they've already spooked the water. So you're probably not gonna be fishing over unpressured fish. So, you know, just pay attention to other people in the stream and stay away from them. You're gonna be better off. And then the worst thing you can do is get snagged. The worst thing you can do is to just jump right in the water and start fishing, okay? You don't know if there's fish there, but there could be fish right where you're going to step into the water. Trout will live where it's a good place to live, regardless of traffic, regardless of foot traffic and waders. If it's a good place to feed, they'll be in there. So you want to kind of sit back, relax, decompress a little bit, and look at the water. Look for rising fish, look for fish in the water, maybe walk a half mile and see what the water looks like. But don't just jump in the water and start fishing unless you know the river. If you know the river, fine. But if new river, spend some time looking at it. Generally, if you're fishing a new stream, the section with the most structure, the most rocks, the most logs, whatever, is going to have more fish because there's just more variety there. Fish don't always need heavy cover, but they need some protection nearby. So, you know, look for places with a whole bunch of rocks on the bottom, bigger rocks. I like to look for places that are not straight. I like to look for either bends in the river, because you're usually going to have some better pools with bends in the river, or you want to look for, in a small stream like this, you want to look for some drop in altitude. Because if you go lower on this stream, it's going to be much thinner. See, this is all, whoa! I was just going to say, this is almost too slow. Could that have been a brown? Did you see the fish?
It could be. It was similar size. I think
See, they're not eating that nymph at all. Well, that one did, but there's a lot of stoneflies in here. Yeah, I'm sure there's fish in there, but again, there's so much tasty water in a stream like this that you don't really need to waste a lot of time changing flies. It's more fun to go exploring, find what's in the next pool. Oh, there's a rise. You don't see them rise very often in here. Little one. Oh, I broke them up. So this pool is kind of flat and open. There might be fish in here. It's got enough depth, but you know, I think if there was food, if there were mayflies on the water or something, you'd see fish back in this flatter water. But it's a good place to feed, but I think that not a lot of places to hide. Sometimes there's fish in here, but I think that as we get up into this faster, deeper, darker water, maybe a better spot. Yep. Ooh, fish took the little. I didn't even see that rise, but I saw the big dry move. The fish took the little dry. So sometimes when you're fishing double dries, your big dry is still an indicator because you can't see fish taking that little tiny fly, and that's okay. You'll see the big dry move. I think a good rule of thumb in fishing small, shallow streams like this is the best water is going to be the water where you can't quite see the bottom. If every rock is really sharp and visible, it's either not deep enough or not fast enough. And you can see in this riffle that I'm fishing here, I can't really see the bottom that well. And there's a fish. That worked out well. So, you know, you want to look for places where the rocks on the bottom start to get fuzzy, where you can't quite make out the definition of the rocks. And then it's usually going to hold a fish. And that fish took the General T. Beautiful, beautiful. Wild native brook trout. They look so cool from above on these white rocks. Okay, I expect to be a fish up there in that faster water. That's where I expect them to be. Broken, they can hide in there, a lot of food, but no, nothing. So there's, you know, there's basically two things. Either they're just not eating right now, or I've spooked them with my cast or with my wading. I don't think it's the fly. In a river like this, they don't have a ton of food. They're going to eat almost anything that looks buggy. And so I think that they're either spooked or they're just not eating for whatever reason. Oh, that was a decent one. And again, you're going to miss. These little brook trout are so good at getting off, you're going to miss them. You're going to hook them, they're going to get off, you're going to miss the strike. Don't let it bother you. You're not doing anything wrong. You want to be quick, but sometimes they just get unbuttoned. And you don't want to beat yourself up over it, because you're not doing anything wrong. You keep fishing, you'll land one to get a picture of it. Ah, that's where like I was saying, they're gonna get off. They're so good at getting off. That was probably the king of the pool there. Sometimes you'll find 2 or 3 brook trout, or trout in general, brooks or browns in these pockets. Sometimes there'll just be one. The other thing is, you notice I'm not fishing my cast out. I'm not letting the fly come all the way back to me, because I've already thrown my fly line in the pool, and the fly line landing on top of the fish is going to scare them. So any place my fly line has landed on a subsequent cast, it's not worth it, because anything under that, where that fly line landed is going to be spooked fish. So you can apply, the small stream stuff to bigger rivers as well. The fish are still going to be feeding, even in a really large river. They're generally going to be feeding in 2 to 4 feet of water, 1 to 2 feet per second, and uniform flow. They're going to be in the bubble line for the most part. So, oops, you can apply this to lots of different waters. And in a big river, people will tell you, and I think this is erroneous, people will tell you to fish a big river and divide it up into lots of little tiny rivers. And that can work, but the problem is that in a big river, you can go a half mile between good spots, or a half mile even between something that'll hold trout. So I think in a big river, you first got to look at it at a macro level. And in general, if the river's really fast, like the Madison, you look for slower water. If the river is really slow, like the Delaware, you look for faster water. Because you're looking for that 1 to 2 feet per second. If the river is really deep in most places, then you want to look for shallow water. And if the river is really shallow, then you want to look for deeper places. So you're always looking for that kind of Goldilocks water wherever you're fishing, whether it's in a little stream like this. I mean, if I was in a big river, I'd be fishing the same flow and the same depth as in this little tiny brook trout stream. Trout are not that different. Oh, I just spooked one. I just spooked one. I haven't been careful enough. I just spooked another one. So, I haven't really been creeping up to these pools today, and I've learned something else. Usually you don't have to really be stealthy. But I've learned by watching stuff today that I've not been stealthy enough. So I need to keep my profile lower, sitting on a rock or whatever, and sneak up on them a little bit more rather than standing on top of a rock. Usually in this water, I can get away with standing on top of rocks, but the water's low, it's clear, and fish are obviously spookier than they would normally be. And maybe I need to use longer casts too, so I can stay farther away from the fish. And again, that's the same whether you're fishing a little tiny mountain brook like this or a big river. You start spooking fish, you start seeing them darting upstream, you know you got to move a little slower and keep your profile a little lower. There are no hard and fast rules in this game, you know, you just you learn as you go. And don't let anybody tell you that there's a rule, because you'll break that rule and have a good day of fishing.